Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Running Tales podcast. My name's Craig Lewis, and this is where you can find the extraordinary stories of everyday runners. Now, today we've got a very special guest in the form of 14-time ultramarathoner and coach Abby Heffern. But before we go into Abby's story, I just wanted to quickly remind you to keep telling all your running buddies, your club mates, your social media friends all about Running Tales and the stories that we tell here. As we look forward to continue growing this project and this podcast and our Substack page, which is runningtales.substack.com, we are absolutely always indebted to your help and support. So hit all the like buttons, hit all the share buttons, shout about what we do as loudly as you can, and most importantly of all, talk about the stories of the incredible and inspirational people we chat to here. And listen, if you want to take that one step further, backers in the pocket, we always appreciate your support there at all, as well at buymeacoffee.com/runningtales. That's buymeacoffee.com/runningtales. And the link to that and to all our brilliant affiliate partners can be found in the show notes. A quick reminder as well to have a listen back to our special episode from the Bristol Half Marathon last week. Folks, it's the only way that you can find out about how one supporter told Michelle and I to run straight into the river. So have a listen back to that and find out what that was all about. And on our Substack, you can read the incredible story of Joe Hardin and how his Odd Duck running business features everything from race directing to making awards to designing merchandise, all while he trains for the 500-kilometer Vol State Ultramarathon. I am tired just thinking about it. Now, let's talk about today's guest. Abby is a running and strength coach who recently ran her first 100-miler, and that is an experience which she beautifully encapsulated on her The Wild Dog Write Up Substack page. So, folks, do go and check that out. She has dreams to run plenty more hundreds and perhaps even to tackle a 200-mile adventure in the future. While her passion for running is fueled by a love of the outdoors, she sees her role as a coach as being able to help people achieve more than they think they are ever capable of. So listen, folks, without further ado, let's welcome Abby to the Running Tales podcast. How are you, Abby?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here and really happy that you brought me on.
No, thank you so much. And I suppose the best place to start is perhaps to talk a little bit about that journey to your 100-miler, because you did tell it so wonderfully on your Substack page, and it was really quite the journey. And it kind of didn't start out as, well, I don't suppose anyone's 100-mile journey starts out as get out of bed and run 100 miles, but there was plenty of ups and downs on the way towards it, wasn't there?
Yes, there were a lot of ups and downs, and actually probably more downs than there were ups until I finally kind of got there. And I shared it and I continue to talk about it because I think what we see most of the time on social media is people taking really big jumps from the marathon or maybe a 50K to 100 miles, like within a
Yeah.
year or even 2 years. And my journey to 100 miles was completely opposite. Even though I had envisioned that jump for myself, I did my first 50 miler in 2019. And after I did my first 50 miler, I was already like, when can I get to 100? Um, and I was really working towards a very quick transition into running 100 miles, and it ended up taking me 7 years to get there. So I want to like validate and almost provide a different perspective to the experience of running longer ultras, because I do think it can feel like if you're not making that big jump right away, or if it is taking you a really long time to get to where you want to go running wise, that there's something wrong with you or wrong with your journey. And that's just not true. And I've found a lot of gratitude in the path that I ended up on.
Yeah, and we'll go a little bit more into that journey, but it kind of does strike me that the idea that jumping from 50 miles, which in itself is fairly ridiculous to most people out there,
Yeah.
but even to most runners, to do twice that, to run 100 miles. I mean, it is I guess some of the influencers out there and some of the other people almost make it sound easy, and it's just not, is it?
No, and I also now on the other side of my own experience with it taking so long, and it took me 13 ultras to finally run 100 miles, which was then my 14th ultra. I've actually become a huge proponent of taking your time. And of course, like we want to reach our goals efficiently, and we're never going to feel totally ready. But I'm also really try to teach my clients that it's okay to learn and grow and repeat the same distance a couple times and learn from your mistakes before, going up into that next level, whatever that next level is, whether you're trying to go from half marathon to marathon to 50 miles, or 50 miles to 100 miles. So, it's really changed my perspective. And again, like, everyone's path and journey is their path and journey, and there's no right or wrong. Like, to the person who was able to go from 0 to 100 miles, like, in a year, that's amazing. And I applaud you, and you got what you needed out of that. But there's also another way to do it, whether you have to do it that way because things aren't working out the way you thought they would, or you're just choosing to move a little slower. That's okay too. Everyone's on their own path and their own journey. And I think there's, a lot of paths to the mountaintop, literally and figuratively. So
Yeah, definitely. So talk to us about some of those, I suppose, those struggles you found along the way, and I guess really what was, like we say, it's obviously hard, but you did kind of think you could make that jump. What was it that you suddenly found that was so much harder than you'd anticipated?
yeah, for me, it was my stomach and the fueling and having a lot of GI distress when I was racing, which I didn't anticipate when I started the sport. I really struggled in my first 50 miler in 2019 with my stomach. But at the time, because it was my first one and I didn't really know what I was doing and I was pretty unprepared, I didn't have a lot of food on me. I didn't have a lot of hydration on me. At that first ultra, I had kind of chalked it up to like, oh, I was just unprepared. That's why I got sick. And then even as I started doing more things right, so bringing gels, bringing food, bringing electrolytes, I still would end up really in the last like 2/3, so almost the majority of the race, really anything over 4 hours, I would end up with this debilitating acid reflux that would then turn into dry heaving and just constant throwing up that would never stop. So it was like a train that once it got rolling, there was nothing I could do to stop it. Like there was no second win. I'd just be throwing up for literally the rest of the day.
Mhm.
And so I really struggled between like 50K and 100K because I felt like my fitness was there and my physical abilities were improving. And I physically was capable of running 100 miles, but I was getting so sick for so long at the end of these races. I really felt like it was irresponsible to go up to 100 miles if I couldn't figure out how to keep food down for 50 miles. And B, like, it just wasn't the day that I wanted to have at 100 miles. I didn't want to, do the first 20 miles and then throw up for the next 80. Like that was just not the experience that I was looking for.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to figure that out, at least get it a little bit better. Like, a little bit of distress here and there, I guess to some degree is normal, but like really intense throwing up for, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. Like I really wanted to improve upon that before I let myself go to the 100-mile distance.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? There's a lot of talk in particularly the ultra running world, I think, but in marathons as well, embracing the pain cave, and you're going to have to go somewhere you've never been before and gritting it through. And I guess that's kind of fair enough, but we've got to enjoy these events at the end of the day, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also it was also my belief in myself because I knew physically I could do it. And I am very strong mentally now. And also like I've done a lot of lifting and I'm really good at running slow for like a really long period of time. Speed is not a strength of mine, but I'm really good at like finding that jog pace and then just not stopping for a long time. So I knew that 100 miles was probably going to be a really good distance for me. And I believed that if I could figure out the fueling, I could have a really great day out there. And so it was both like what I wanted out of my experience and the belief that I was capable of something at that distance if I could figure out what was going on with my stomach. And I wanted to set myself up to have the best possible first 100 miler that I could have, basically.
Yeah. Was there any stage when you were sort of struggling with your stomach and whatever during those 50 milers? And I think if I remember rightly on the Substack, you talk about some low moments within those races. Was there a stage where you just thought, I'm actually getting worried now that this is never going to happen?
Yeah, I think it's hard to remember if there was a point where I ever thought it wasn't going to happen. I maybe had one of those moments after a really tough 100K attempt where I was just like, what am I doing? Am I am I really cut out for this? Is this really what I'm meant to be doing? Should I resign myself to like, does my body and my stomach just not agree with being out there for more than 4 hours? In which case, should I just do races that take me less than 4 hours, which would really be 50K and under? I definitely had one of those moments, probably the year before I had like a breakthrough. So it's kind of, I think it's that picture. I don't know if you've ever seen that visual of the guy like chipping away
Yeah.
at rocks, and he turns around and quits without seeing that he was like so close to the end. So I think I was at that point where I had been at it for so many years and was getting so frustrated and so disappointed, and continuing to like, people were like, oh, it's so great. You finished 50 miles or you finished 100K. But again, internally, I'm like, I know I can do more than just finish. Like, I know what my fitness is capable of. So I think I was getting to the point right at the end where I was really starting to question, like, am I persevering or am I ignoring something that is just not meant for me? And I think what kept me going was just my love for being outside for a really long time. And I think what I ended up doing mentally is actually just resigning to like, well, what do I really want? Do I want to race fast 50Ks and marathons, or do I want to be outside for 12 plus hours at a time, exploring and
Yeah.
adventuring, and seeing
Yeah.
new places? And that's what I wanted. That's why I was there. That's why I was doing the sport to begin with. So I think I actually found a place where I was like, you know what? If this is my cross to bear, that is what it is. And that's okay, because I still get to be out here for the reason I want to be out here. I still get to be, in the outdoors and on these big adventures. And I'm okay with having a little bit of suffering if that means I still get to do this thing that I love the way that I want to do it.
Mm. So you mentioned breakthrough, and then you've kind of also mentioned continued suffering. So, was the breakthrough and the managing to do it just going, I'm just going to have to put up with it, or was there anything else that you managed to conquer in terms of solving those problems?
Yeah, I think it was two things. I do think I reached the point where I just was okay with like living with that issue while I was racing. And I also, I did have a race right at the end of kind of figuring things out where I had gone through the same thing. I had thrown up, gotten sick. This was like ultra number 11 or something. So like at this point, I'm like 11 ultras into getting sick at every single one. And at that race, it was the first race where I really decided, you know what? I'm just done complaining about this. Like I am so sick of this, like defining the story of my entire race. And yes, it means that I'm probably not going to reach my time goal or my placing goal. But you know what? Like, I'm still going to make the most of it. I'm still going to have fun. I'm still going to find the bright side. And I was actually able to like overcome the physical discomfort and finish and run a little bit better than I had done in the past while getting sick. So that was like a mental moment where I was like, wow, okay, I actually can do a little bit more than I thought I could, even when I'm still getting sick and things aren't going perfectly. And then after that, in I think this was like 2025, early 2025, I had finally started working. I'd worked with a couple dietitians. No one had been able to help me. And I finally found a different dietitian with like 30 years of experience. And he basically told me, it just sounds like your gut doesn't agree with anything. And you need to treat your stomach during races like you would if you had the stomach flu in real life, and basically take out any possible trigger that's going to be difficult to digest or cause any sort of reaction, which is basically like any sort of artificial product, anything with like citric acid in it or stevia. And so his recommendation was natural, simple foods only. Again, think what you would eat when you have the stomach flu: maple syrup, rice, bread, tortillas. And that's
Yeah.
it. And with that advice, I have not gotten sick the way I used to get sick ever again. That was like that solved all of my problems, total breakthrough. Just doing all of those products and all those things that typically work for other runners didn't work for me. And when I went to something really simple and basic, it completely changed everything for me. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was the breakthrough. That then I was able, I did my first race with no GI issues. It was like super hot. The course was like sand and really hilly. So like a type of race where you would think that someone like me who's really susceptible to GI distress would have GI distress. But with that fueling, again, just maple syrup, mostly, and then rice if I felt a little hungry. I had no issues, and it was like absolutely mind blowing to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even think this was possible for me anymore. And now I'm racing, freely and without being, bound by these stomach issues.
Yeah, it's incredible that I wonder sometimes in the whole world of running generally and everything we do, whether the simplest answers to things we used to do and the most basic way of doing it are sometimes the best. There's obvious benefits of these gels and everything that we look at, whether it's super trainers or whatever, but sometimes getting back to the basics, I think, might just be the better answer.
Gosh, it's so true. And especially in this era of like super high carb and all these fancy
Mm.
products and stuff, which again, if that works for you and you don't have GI stress, like amazing. More like if you can take in 100 grams of carbs per hour and feel good and not get sick, like I'm so happy for you and that's awesome. But that's not the only way to do things. And
Yeah.
have this I can't do any products. So I'm just taking in maple syrup and rice. Right now, the most I can do is somewhere around like 50 grams of carbs per hour. And I do that for 100 miles and it works fine for me. And it's better than the alternative of like throwing up and then depleting myself because I'm throwing up. So I think it's just remembering that, like, we're all our own experiment, and what works for your favorite elite runner or your favorite podcast, it could work for you, but pay attention if it doesn't work for you and don't be afraid to try something else.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us all about the success. What was the 100 miler that you eventually completed, and yeah, how did it all go?
Yeah. So, like I said, 2025 was the first two ultras. I think I did a 100K. I did a 50K and a 40 miler where I finally didn't have stomach issues. So it was like two in a row. I remember the first 50K where I had no stomach issues. I was like, okay, green light, but like I want to make sure it's not a fluke. So
Yeah.
then I did another 40 miler and again, no stomach issues. And I'm like, all right, here we go. Like it's time, 100 miles, here I come. So yeah, 2025 was when I got those two ultras under my belt and signed up for my first 100, which ended up being this past January 2026. So this year, at the start of the year. And that was a race that is in Central Florida called Forgotten Florida. And it's this beautiful, stunning, almost entirely point to point race that runs through some of the best wilderness that Florida has to offer. So I know a lot of people don't think wilderness when they think of Florida. They think of theme parks and beaches and the cities and lots of people, but Florida actually has 10 million acres of protected land, and it's one of the most wild and diverse places you could ever run through. So Forgotten Florida is really just a stunning tour of that. So yeah, it goes 75 miles point to point, and then there's just a quick 25 miles out and back. And it was just, I felt like it was both a celebration of how far I had come and everything I had been through to get there, and also as someone who's not from Florida and has learned to love Florida, I also felt like it was a celebration of like my love for Florida and how when I first got down here, I like everybody else, I thought Florida was just heat, humidity, bugs. I hated it down here. But then as I learned about all of the nature that's here and the history and the wildlife, I've really fallen in love with it. So the 100 miler ended up being a really cool celebration of just my love for Florida and everything I've learned about it. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I don't know too much about Florida. I'm obviously a long way away from it. We kind of hear a lot about alligators, but I'm like,
there are gators here, but they won't hurt you. We call them swamp puppies. They're pretty chill. They're not interested. Probably the thing that you legit have to be the most concerned about, but this is almost anywhere in the United States, are snakes. So snakes are harder to spot. Also not going to go after you, but if you step on one, it's a problem. But the gators are actually way less scary than people think they are.
Oh, that's good to know if I ever find myself in Florida. How did it feel when you crossed that finish line? Because I've said this to people quite a lot, but it's not just the completion of 100 miles, is it? For you, it's a completion of 7-year journey and probably even longer than that.
Yeah, it was so special. The day itself, I mean, like I said, I had waited so long to do that 100 miler until I figured out my gut stuff, because I really believed I was capable of a great 100-mile day. And then I finally got there and I had a great 100-mile day. I mean, there's always something you can improve upon, But for a first 100 miler in also really challenging conditions, it ended up being record Arctic temperatures for Florida. So it feels like 7 degrees, 30-mile-per-hour winds. So it was like freezing, freezing cold, which is not typical for this area.
So just, I'm guessing you're talking 7 Fahrenheit there.
All right, 7 Fahrenheit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like
So that's
seven.
really cold.
Yeah, it feels
Yeah,
like 7 degrees Fahrenheit.
yeah,
And in Florida, it's extra cold because the air is, even when it's cold, the air is still very humid here. So you're
yeah,
cold and you're wet. So that adds, to it as well. But even with that, like I was just so prepared. I had been through so much, like every problem you could possibly think of, I had already been through at shorter ultras.
hmm.
So I just had every piece of gear on me, every backup fueling, every, possible thing. I thought through every contingency. So as problems came up throughout the day, as they always do, because there is no perfect ultra, I was just prepared to handle it and kind of knew what I needed to do to keep myself moving forward. So yeah, I ended up crossing the finish line in like 27 hours and 39 minutes. I think I ended up third female. Again, just like you can't ask. And I had so much fun. I
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it did get uncomfortable, but I had fun. I loved the course. I loved, again, being out there for more than 24 hours. Like I just love that type of adventure. So I remember running in to the finish line, 250 meters out. Like I can see the finish line. I'm with my pacer and I'm running in, and there's a woman on the side of the trail. People are standing there kind of like cheering you in. And she's cheering me in and you're amazing, like great job. And I had this moment where like I saw myself standing on the sidelines cheering for so many other people for the past 7 years. And now
yeah,
I was the one getting to run and finish the race and being cheered for and supported. And it was like, I've spent 7 years wondering when it was going to be my turn. And in this moment, it's finally my turn. And that was just really powerful to have. And I'll always remember that moment.
yeah. And I think some of what you're saying there goes back to what you were talking about earlier in terms of you don't have to do it in 1 year. Sometimes it's better to take your time over it because you do learn all those different lessons along the way. You're ready, really, really ready for it when it comes. And also there's, well, I don't know. I think there's a sensational feeling of success whenever you do something amazing like that, but maybe even more so when the journey's been over a longer period.
Yeah. And it was really validating because like I said, I had the day that I had always envisioned was possible. Like I had truly pictured that moment in my mind so many times over the past 7 years. I'm just on a training run and I'm just thinking about it and dreaming about it. And like, honestly, picturing myself finishing on the podium. And like, I'm not too ashamed to admit, I have that, I'll play that dream in my head where I like finish on the podium and it's super
Yeah.
victorious. And, it's like, I think most runners, or I like to believe most runners have a moment that they're dreaming of, that they're replaying in their head when they're training, that feels like kind of a pipe dream, but they can't help but think about it and picture it. So I had been picturing that in my head for so long. And then it happened. So that's just, again, a really awe-inspiring thing to experience. Like I had directly envisioned this moment for 7 years, and now I'm here, and I'm not just finishing, I'm finishing in the way I had always pictured I would finish.
Mm. So just to rewind, I suppose, to before you were doing the ultras towards, I guess, towards wherever the start of your running journey was. Um, have you always been a runner? And what was it that made you think it's ultra running that I'd like to do now?
Yeah, so I grew up running track and field and cross country. That being said, I was nothing sensational. I mostly did it because my friends did it and we had to do a sport at school. And it was like the one sport that I could get away with being decent at without much practice. I was like, what can I do that's fun that I could do with my friends? Also, like, I'm kind of naturally good at, not so naturally good that I was winning anything, but that I could not lose things without practicing all the time. So that's how I got into it. And then even after I graduated high school, I remember thinking like, yay, I never have to run again. I'm done with that. But it just sticks with you. And I went through college, and as college got stressful and things started happening, I found myself using running as like a stress reliever. Like it was
Mm,
still, and I remember thinking, this is so weird. I told myself I hated running.
yeah.
Why am I willingly getting on the treadmill at 6 a.m. before my classes? as a way to like kind of blow off stress. So even when I thought I would never do it again and I hated it and I didn't want to do it, it just continued. I continued to gravitate towards it. And, you know, running a couple miles here and there through college, ended up, well, I'll sign up for a 10K, ended up, why not do a half marathon? And then I got into ultra running because I was running half marathons and marathons. I was thinking I was going to go like the Boston qualifying route. I was really focused on getting faster and like seeing how good I could be on the road. And then I did a trail race locally that just I stumbled across just for fun in 2018. It was 7 miles. I don't know. I was just drawn to it. I think I was also getting a little bored of the road. I thought it sounded cool to be out in nature and to not actually worry about pace or splits. I thought it was like, would be something like, wow, I can actually just run for fun and not think about Boston or times for a little bit. And I did that 7 mile trail race in 2018 and I was just totally hooked. I mean, I remember running down the trail in the last like 3 or 4 miles of the race, totally by myself because people get spread out in trail races, feeling like so free. I had brought my headphones with me, you know, like a road racer, you always wear your headphones.
Yeah.
So I had brought my headphones with me to wear on the trail. And halfway through the race, I just took them out because I was like, these are annoying. Like, I want to look around and listen and like be here.
Yeah.
So it was like really transformative just to experience running in a different way. It's a little bit more internal and meaningful and freeing. And then at that trail race, there were also people running 50K. They had other distances. So they had the 50K, 50 mile, and they had the 100-mile distance at that race. And that's when I was introduced to ultra running for the first time. And I was just like, that sounds cool. And I want to say I've done something like that. And that's like different and something I don't hear a lot of people being capable of doing. I wonder what would happen if I did that.
Yeah, no, I think for me as well, I love the I've not done anything like the distances you've done, but I love the idea of getting out on the trails, seeing a bit of the countryside, just getting away from everything. And I do get frankly bored. Sorry to all our road running listeners who love running on the
Yeah,
road.
no shade. No shade.
I get bored. You love it. That's cool.
Yeah.
You can keep the roads.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Whatever
fantastic
works.
getting out there. I find it fantastic to get out there into the countryside and just look around. And yeah, I'm sure where you are as well, there must be some really spectacular places to go and see.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened too. I mean, up until that point, I think I had just moved to Florida from New Jersey a couple of years prior and had no idea that, like most people, no idea that we had trails in Florida. Like, it's just not a state that's the first thing you think of because there's no mountains and it's pretty crowded. So I think I was also just blown away by the beautiful trails that we had and how open it was and how quiet it was. And I had no idea. And I just wanted more of that. Like, I wanted to spend more time out there. I didn't want to stop doing that and go back to the road.
How did you find that first transition up from, say, a marathon distance, particularly a marathon distance where I'm guessing you're going at, if you're looking to try and BQ, you're going at a pretty decent lick. You're not messing around doing it in 7 hours or anything. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but to then go to a 50K, probably over harder terrain where, suddenly walking might become involved and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so this is pretty crazy. I did that 7 mile trail race. And then the next year I came back and signed up for the 50-mile race.
Yeah.
So I skipped 50K.
You just missed 50K.
Yeah. I mean, again, I was in my early 20s. Like, this was like peak David Goggins era. So I think also I also didn't know a lot of people who were ultra running. So I didn't really have anyone to be like, maybe let's think about that for a second. All I knew of ultra running was David Goggins. And I was like, okay, so he says I should just do it and be tough and like go for the thing. So that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, I took a very big leap from my first trail race and then coming back the year after doing 50 miles. I had no idea what I was doing. I kept running very fast, like I had been doing when I was training for marathons, but not running enough. So I was basically doing marathon training. I was still mostly running on the road because like I still didn't know the trails in the area. It was like the trail where the race was kind of far away from my apartment. So I still did most of my training on the road. I basically did marathon training for a year and then was like, it's basically the same, right? Like you do 26, you do 50, worst case scenario, I'll walk. And yeah, I got humbled that first 50 miles for sure. all of the mistakes I made became glaringly obvious when I was out there. And I had a very challenging first ultra. I think I got to mile 18 and was like already cooked because I
Yeah.
had started on like marathon pace for a 50 miler. And in my defense, the group that I had been running with a little bit leading up to that race, because I was still running really fast, they were like hyping me up, being like, you're going to win and you're going to set your course record. I was like, heck yeah, I am. Like, I'm going to kill this thing. And then, yeah, obviously, like went out at the front of the pack. I ran every single hill. I didn't do any hiking in the first 20 miles. And then I promptly hit the wall and watched everyone come by me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went in very unprepared, not knowing very much. And of course, like as a coach, I'm so happy I can help people have a better first ultra experience. But I do think there's something endearing about like not knowing anything and just going for it and having to learn some lessons the hard way.
Oh, absolutely. So my big ultra failure, it just seems so mad to me now that I didn't even kind of know about this as a thing because it's the most biggest thing ever out there, even for marathons, which I've done before. But I got
Yeah.
massive cramp after about this was doing a 50K and I got a huge amount of cramp after about 22, 23 mile. And someone just says, have you been having electrolytes? I was like, electro what?
Yes.
So
Yeah,
what?
I
How
was
do I
through
not know
any of
about that?
that. I think I went through an aid station at like mile 20 and they were like, you don't look so good. And then they're like, what do you have on you for like water and fuel? I had nothing on me. And they were like,
Yeah,
okay, here's a salt pill. It's like,
yeah, yeah.
what? Yeah. So it was again, like in the moment, not what I would necessarily choose for myself again. Now that I know better, not what I choose for the people I coach.
Mm.
But it's something I look back on with a lot of fondness.
Yeah, absolutely. So at what point of the journey, you've mentioned the coaching a couple of times there. At what point did the coaching start? How did you get into all of that?
Yeah, so I actually started coaching before I started running ultras. I had always coached through college. I coached like track and field on the side as an assistant, track and field teams like elementary school or middle school, or cross country, or like some youth run clubs here and there. And then I knew I wanted to go into athletics because I've always loved sport. So after college, I ended up working and interning out of a couple gyms and
Yep.
doing both the running coaching, which obviously I was a runner. I still loved coaching runners, but I was also really into strength training as well and enjoyed both doing that side of training as an athlete, but then learning about it as a coach and helping other people get stronger, both for running and for other sports. So for the first couple of years of my coaching career, I didn't just work with runners. I worked with athletes from all types of sports, and just general population people who just wanted to be stronger and fitter.
Mm.
So I worked out of a gym for a little while. And then in 2020, actually, I opened my own small personal training gym where I did one-on-ones in small groups. And again, worked with a lot of runners, but still did strength and conditioning for a lot of other people as well. And now in 2026, I've since closed that gym and I've moved my entire coaching business online. And I just work with runners where I do the running coaching and I do the running and strength combined coaching as well.
Mm. So with the strength, I
Yeah.
always ask coaches this because as somebody quite close to me might not be very good at keeping up with their strength training. Um, First of all, kind of the obligatory question of how important it is, and then I suppose secondly, how do because a lot of us runners we think like we love running, but we don't necessarily love the strength training. It's like, oh, do I have to do that as well? How obviously it's important, and I'd love to know why you think it is as well. But how do you encourage somebody who sort of has that attitude of I just want to run to do the strength training, and how do you persuade them that it can be interesting and fun as well?
Yeah, for sure. As for why it's important, like I mean, I don't want to make the entire podcast. That's something I could talk about for a really long time because I feel like
Sure.
there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I do think my background is unique in that I wasn't a running coach turned strength coach. I was actually a career strength coach, really
Yeah.
first, and learned the fundamentals of strength and conditioning. Again, not just for runners, but for all different types of sports. So, and I had mentors who also had nothing to do with running and were teaching me like true, honest basics about strength and conditioning for all athletes and all people. So I do think that makes my perspective very unique because of I think I have a little deeper, broader experience there than most running coaches do. And it's important because you here's the thing that like people I think often forget. Yes, we want to strength train to be good runners and to be healthy, but also we want to strength train to be prepared for life. And at the end of the day, if you fall on the trail, if you roll your ankle on a pothole, if you fall down the stairs and do something outside of running, you want to have a strong and durable body that is going to keep you protected and give you the best possible outcome in the worst case scenario. Again, whether it's something that happens when you're running or something that happens when you're outside of running, and also is going to allow you to stay functional and running until you're 60, 70, 80 years old. Because I have yet to meet another runner who's like, I want to do this for the next 5 years and then I never want to do it again, right? Yeah. Runners want to be running for as long as possible. And when you're 20 or 30 or maybe even 40, it feels like the strength training is kind of like a drop in the bucket and doesn't matter as much for performance or maybe even injury prevention. But I always encourage people to think about their 60, 70, and 80-year-old self and what choices are you going to make about how you're going to treat your body in order to set yourself up for success and for running longevity. Because again, that's also where we get the most amount of performance improvement is staying in the game long enough so we can see that improvement happen. And if you're constantly getting injured because your bones are weak and your tendons aren't durable, which you can get from strength training, you can get stronger bones and more durable tendons. And if you're losing functionality just as you're getting older because you're not practicing sitting down and standing back up or picking stuff off the ground, you're not going to have that durability to run late into your years, and you're going to miss out on years and years and years that you could still be improving and running and seeing what happens with 20 years of progress instead of a limited 5 to 10 years of progress. Does that answer the question? Kind of.
No, definitely. And actually, I find it really interesting because I kind of make out I'm ignorant of these things. I'm not completely ignorant. I'm just basically a bit lazy. But my wife is a fitness trainer and a personal trainer as well. But part of what she does is she works with older people generally and does strength and balance classes for them. And obviously, what you were saying there about running into later life rings true, but I think just like outside of the running world, just doing some strength training, and that doesn't necessarily have to be down at the gym doing all these amazing things. It makes such a difference when you're reaching your 70s, 80s and 90s, because you're talking about just basic fall prevention and being able to reach up and grab something off the top shelf of your kitchen, and then you're talking about independence and staying out of that home that you're dreading for as long as you possibly can. So keeping strong for as long as possible is obviously it's so important, and for us runners as well, that's equally as true.
And there's just things like you cannot get from running that you can only get from strength training, that it's just there's no debate. I mean, what I've seen on Substack a lot recently is there's like a lot of people sharing studies about how strength training doesn't actually help running economy or doesn't actually help running performance, all these like nuanced little data points, whatever. At the end of the day, there is no debate that strength training increases bone density, proven over and over and over again, and increases the thickness and durability of your tendons. Those two things will prevent stress fractures, really common running injury, and will prevent tendonitis. And pathologies within the tendon. So you can have the performance debate all you want, but anytime you're doing something that is going to keep your body healthy, you are setting yourself up for improvement in performance, because you need to be healthy in order to see your performance improve over time. So I think people get lost in like the nuance of like, well, what does it do and what does it not do? I can tell you what it does for sure. It keeps you healthy, it keeps you durable, and it's definitely going to give you a longer life and a longer life within running as well.
Yeah. I mean, the way I think about it is I've never seen or heard from a real champion runner, whether it's Usain Bolt over 100 meters or Sebastian Selway doing his sub 2 hour marathon, or Killian Jornet or Rachel Entriquette. I've never heard any of them turn around and go, oh, well, I don't really bother with strength training at all. So
Yeah, exactly. Right. And there's a reason that it's been a part of runners' routines, but also any athletes' routines for literally decades. Like if you see these basics that are being done for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, there's a reason for that. And it's not just because certain things show up in the science or in data, it's because coaches and athletes notice anecdotally that they work. If they
yeah,
didn't work in practice, people wouldn't still be doing them, and you wouldn't see them repeated with the same athletes over and over and over again. And again, I think what gets lost in this era, like science is important, data is important, but any good coach knows that coaches often notice things that work before the science catches up. So you
yeah,
really want to pay attention to like what some of the best coaches and runners and athletes have been doing for a really long time, whether there's super specific data to support it or not, because they're the ones who are actually seeing what works in practice. And then they're just going to repeat that over and over and over again.
yeah. So how do you
That might have
get?
been a tangent. Sorry, that
No, no,
definitely was a tangent.
no. That's it's. I do find it fascinating,
Yeah.
and it helps concentrate my mind as well. Because as I said, if I can go out and run rather than do strength training, I will always do that. So how do you get
Yeah.
those people like me to go and do the strength training and to find some enjoyment in it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for most runners, especially runners with limited time or who are trying to focus on increasing in mileage, with which most long distance runners are, marathon runners and ultra runners, I think it's just about making the workout small enough and short enough that the barrier of entry is super low.
Hmm.
And I think you just start with whatever feels like doable and easy to fit into your schedule, and like it doesn't take away from the running. So that can come in so many different forms. That can come in forms of just like super short, I call them exercise snacks. So like 10 to 15 minutes of strength training 2 to 3 days a week. If you're not doing a lot of it, that's going to go a long way if you do it consistently. So
Yeah.
again, I think people get stuck because they feel like, oh, for it to do anything, and we do this in running too, for it to do anything, I've got to train for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, multiple days a week. And it's not true. We know this to be true in running, that you can do a couple miles, not a couple, but like 5 to 6 miles, 4 to 5 days a week. You do that every week for 6 months. That's going to have a huge fitness and performance impact on your body. So it's the same thing with strength training. If, it doesn't feel fun to do strength training for 30 to 45 minutes, start with 10 to 15, do that a couple days a week, but do it every single week. And you
Hmm.
will get benefits just from that. And it's certainly better than doing nothing. So the clients I work with actually struggle with this a lot, mostly because they don't have the time. I work with people who are trying to step up into the marathon or the ultra distance, but feel really limited by the fact that they work 40 hours a week or are driving their kids to and from sports on the weekends. And they're wondering how they train for a really long race with really limited time. So I just find that version of strength training that feels doable enough for them that they can repeat it. And then once we've repeated that 10 to 15 minutes of strength training, 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row, then we talk about, okay, how can we make this harder? Or how can we, up the bar a little bit? But always start with what feels fun and feels doable and doesn't feel that stressful.
Yeah.
Do that repeatedly for a month or two, and then see where you can add something here and there, whether it's add more weight, add more time, add more reps. And you just, again, just like running, right? We start with low
Yeah.
mileage. We do something we can repeat week after week. And then we slowly build that over time as it gets more and more doable.
Hmm. Right. No, that's fascinating. I feel like I'm slightly turning this podcast into a free coaching session for myself. So.
I'm happy to provide whatever you want to hear about and your audience wants to hear about. I
um,
love talking about it. I have to be careful because I'll just like keep
give
keep
away all
going
the.
and forget what the original question was. So
No, that's all good. But I did want to talk about the other thing that you kind of spoke about prior to this interview about your coaching, which was how much you like to encourage people that they can do far more than they ever think they can.
yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I actually work with a lot of people who are stepping up into these longer distances for the
Mm.
first time, or maybe for the second or third time, and they're trying to make it a little bit better. And are having a lot of doubt and questions about whether or not they're even capable of doing it, or capable of getting better at it, and struggling with that self-belief and struggling with just feeling confidence in themselves, like they can finish strong and finish proud of themselves. And I feel that way, I think, because, I wrote a little bit about this on Substack. I was so blessed to grow up in an environment with parents and teachers and coaches who relentlessly instilled belief in me. And just from a very young age, I was taught that I could do anything I set my mind to, and sky's the limit. And like, if I work hard, I can learn any new skill, I can master anything. All it takes is hard work and focus and getting the right people around me to teach me. So I've never questioned my ability to do something. I mean, I think that's part of what kept me on the track to 100 miles for so long, was because of just that belief that is automatic to me because of the way I grew up and the people who believed in me and instilled that belief in me. And it's been so interesting as a coach to have so many conversations with people who, instead of their first, reaction to themselves being belief, they're just trained to doubt themselves, or they're conditioned to question themselves. And they really don't think they can run a marathon. They really don't think they can run an ultra. They don't think they're tough enough. They don't think they're fit enough. They've never run before. So how could they ever get to that distance? And I've become really passionate about instilling the belief in others that was instilled in me so young, and trying to help people see that, okay, you might not go to the Olympics, but you can really accomplish anything that you care about and that you work for and that you put your mind to. And that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. That doesn't mean it's going to happen on the first try. Like, it might take you a couple tries, and that's okay. But if you keep going and it's really something that's meaningful to you, it's worth the pursuit, and you will eventually get there. So I think I'm just really passionate about seeing other people step into that, because like, I think about myself and my own life and all of the adventures and opportunities that have opened up to me because of the way I think about myself. So if I can even like help other people see themselves that way and watch as things open up for them, that's just like such a gift to be a part of something like that.
Yeah, and have you managed to see? I see you can see this building of resilience and confidence in the people you coach within running. Did you also sort of see it within spreading into the rest of their lives as well?
Yeah, definitely. I actually feel like that's often what I know is going to happen. It's like my secret when they start, people come in and they're like, yeah, I want to run a marathon, or I want to run a 50K. And it's like, cool, yeah, we'll definitely get you there. And then in the back of my mind, and along the way, you're going to learn things about yourself and grow into a version of yourself that is more resilient, more determined, and more positive in life. And again, that's not something, especially if they're novices or new to running or new to long distance running, they just have no idea that's going to happen. And they're not even necessarily looking for that to happen. And then it starts to happen. They sense that growth of confidence in themselves that comes with like each finish line or each new challenge. And then they notice, like, even if they don't get to the finish line and something happens and it doesn't go their way, they start to notice like, hey, it's okay. Like, I can come back, I can overcome, I'm going to keep trying. And they start to see that in themselves and celebrate that in themselves. And it's like, it's kind of fun because, again, it's like the thing that I know is going to happen the whole
Yeah.
time. And it's really fun to kind of like wait and see when they start to notice it happening within themselves.
Yeah, and I suppose, as a coach and as a runner, would you sort of say to anybody who's not running at all that that's something they can discover if they get into running, whether their goal is to eventually go on and run an ultra, or whether it's just to do a 5K or whatever?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. And it's all relative. I say this to people all the time because people hear like, oh my gosh, 100 miles. I ran a 5K today and now I feel like a loser compared to you. Like, and it's like, it's all relative. If that's hard for you, if that is something that is challenging you and challenging your brain and challenging your body, then that's what matters. And I think finding the challenge that you're drawn to, whether it is a 5K, a half marathon or more, is the most important thing. And the thing that is going to, I think it's just finding something that's going to almost push you to like that next level of having that belief in yourself in order to do that thing. So I think always having a goal or always having a challenge, it's like a little bit of a stretch. Now, it doesn't have to feel impossible, but like if you're running 5Ks, maybe it's a 10K, or maybe it's going from 5K to 4 miles,
Yeah.
anything that just, it gives you that kind of pause where you're like, I could probably do it, but it might be really hard. That's a really great zone to be in, because it's going to be doable enough that you feel like you can keep moving forward towards it, but not so hard that you feel like you're just constantly getting like kicked down in the process.
Mm. That's interesting actually, because some of the jumps we have in running are quite
Yeah.
fun, and actually that might bring us back onto your story, because you kind of have the jump from the half to the marathon, and that seems huge, and then you might have
Yes.
that jump, from not necessarily a marathon to 50K, or even 50K to 50 miles, as long as you don't miss the 50K out.
Yeah.
But then you suddenly have 50 to 100, which is another huge jump. And then you have what you're looking at potentially, which is 100 to 200. So,
Yeah, they are big jumps. And even with the belief that I had in myself going into my 100 miler, the week of, I was honestly pretty anxious because it is really unknown. Once you start making those big jumps, you can go to 100K, but even 100K
yeah.
to 100 miles is a really big jump. And it's also hard to find 100Ks. So yeah, I actually even remember it was like the week of my 100 miler, I was like, I know logically I can do this and I'm prepared for this, but there was still that one little like piece of my brain that was like, wow, like this is way further than I've ever gone before. And I have no idea what to expect. I think at that point, the longest I had been out there was 16 or 17 hours. And I knew it was going to be a 24+ hour day. So it's like kind of doing the math of like, I just have no idea what that's going to feel like and what's going to happen. So I also think normalizing the little voices, whispers of doubt that come along with making jumps like that, and not thinking that's a sign to stop or not do it, but just a sign that you're getting outside your comfort zone. And I also think it can be really valuable to wrestle with the idea of quote unquote failure, which I did a bit leading up to my 100. Like, what happens if I don't finish? Because that's, the longer you go, the more unpredictable it gets. And you could be so prepared and something could just happen and it could not be your day. And I do think there's a lot of value of learning how to like sit with the idea of not finishing or quote unquote failing at
Mm.
something, and getting maybe not comfortable with it, but just finding a place of acceptance of like, that's kind of the price of getting out of your comfort zone and challenging yourself, is putting yourself in a position where you could end up not with the outcome that you wanted, and doing some practicing in your head of like, I'm still going to be the same person. I'm still going to have people that love me. I can come back and try again next year. It's going to be okay. It'll probably hurt for a little while, but it's going to be okay. So I had done a lot of that work as well, of like being okay with the possibility of failure and the possibility of, not finishing and having to endure that pain. But it's just like the heartbreak from like a bad breakup. You go through one bad breakup once in your life. That doesn't mean the breakups that come after that are easier, quote unquote easier, but it's just like you trust yourself to be able to get through it. And I
Yeah.
do think that's what doing hard things like racing and ultras and marathons and whatever, I do think that's what they do for us, is like they again raise that bar of resilience. And it doesn't mean when things don't go our way that it doesn't hurt, but we have trust and confidence in ourselves to get to the other side. And that I think is what enables people to keep doing hard things when they can kind of get over, not to sound cliche, but that fear of failure.
Yeah, definitely. And I also kind of think that, having that that fear of failure, having those nerves, if you don't have them, I think maybe there's a danger of being a bit blasé about it. It's that fear of failure that makes you think really carefully about your nutrition, makes you have your drop bag in the right place, make sure that you got your pacing right, and that you know what electrolytes are and all those sort of
Oh my
things.
gosh, that is so true. And I have thought about that a lot over the past couple years and before my 100 miler, because before my first 50 miler, when I was very unprepared and thought I was going to win, I was not nervous at all.
Yeah.
Zero nerves. I
Yeah.
was like all confidence. And it was because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And then every race after that, it's normal to get a little bit nervous. But now I see it as a sign that I'm preparing and I'm aware
Hmm.
of what I'm getting myself into. Because if you know how hard it's going to get at mile 20, 40, 60, of course you're going to be nervous for that moment. If you don't know what's coming, you're not going to be nervous. And that's actually probably a worse position to be in.
Hmm.
So, same thing before my 100 miler, I was pretty nervous, pretty anxious, but my preparation was on point because I was thinking of every contingency plan possible and getting the gear and the supplies I needed to be ready for that.
Yeah. So what's next, Abby? Is there another 100 miler on the table at the moment, or is the 200 booked yet?
200 is not booked yet, though it is. I'm like eyeing it off in the distance.
Yeah.
So this year, mostly, quote, shorter races for the rest of this year. So I have a 20-mile night race coming up in June, and then I've got a 50K in Florida in November. Both, I'm actually moving to a different part of Florida towards the end of this year to be closer to trails, which is really exciting. So with that move, I won't be doing another like really, really long race. So I'm sticking to the 50K ish distance, A, time wise and logistics wise. But B, I also think it's still, even though I want to do hundreds and 200s, and that's kind of my jam, I still see the value in racing
Mm.
shorter ultras and working on my speed and working on a different type of fitness. So I'm actually really excited to work on that a little bit this year. And then going into 2027, I'll be looking for another 100 miler in the winter. And then if that goes well, I'm eyeing the Across Florida 200 fall 2027 is when I would look into doing that. But we'll see after everything we just talked about, right? Taking that
Yeah, yeah.
stepwise approach, making sure I'm prepared, not rushing the process. I am planning my 2027 so that if I want to do that 200 miler in the fall, I'm able to make it work. But I'm holding that very lightly right now and seeing how things unfold.
Yeah. Fantastic. Oh, well, I wish you all the best of luck with the journey. Where can people sort of catch up with it and see the Substack, find your coaching and everything really?
Yeah, definitely. So my Substack is the best place to follow me on a regular basis because that's definitely where I post the longest form and deepest and both most educational content. So I post a lot of coaching insights on there and then also personal stories. So stories from my races, a lot of the things we just talked about, what I'm learning from my own personal journey goes on there as well. So I definitely encourage people to check out my Substack. It's the Wild Dog Write Up. I don't know if I have a Substack handle. Maybe you can put the link in the show notes.
Yeah, I will.
Substack's a little different than Instagram, but
Yeah.
yes, Abby Heffern, Wild Dog Write Up on Substack. And then I am also on Instagram, wild_dog athletics, which is the name of my coaching business. I do also show up there, but I definitely show up more on my Substack than I do on my Instagram. And I have a website as well, but the Substack and the Instagram are two really great places to start.
Fantastic. Well, Abby, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Running Tales and for telling everyone your story and the routes to 100 miles.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I had so much fun chatting. I feel like we could talk for like another hour, but maybe we'll have to do a part two when I run 200 miles.
Definitely. No, we'll definitely have you back for that. Thanks again so much for joining me tonight. Thanks to everyone for listening to Abby's story, for joining me on the Running Tales podcast. Please check out our Substack, runningtales.substack.com. We got loads and loads of fantastic stories from some really inspirational people there. And do all that liking and subscribing that I talked about at the start. But most of all, A, tell your friends about it, and B, come and join me next week for another episode of the Running Tales podcast.